Sidste fredag fortalte vi historien om Louis Armstrongs betydning for jazzen i New Orleans. Nu tager vi næste kapitel, hvor jazzen flytter nordpå til Chicago. En glad tid for den amerikanske musik. Chicago and all that jazz.
They talk about Chicago style. How did Chicago style get started? A bunch of little boys. Dave Tuff, Jimmy McPartland, Jess Stacy was around. These fellas, they went out and heard this music. Just like the kids today, they go out and hear music. Then they want to play it. So they form a little combo and play. Well, that's what they did.
Allerede omkring 1910 havde de første jazzmusikere fra New Orleans været på gæstespil i Chicago. Pianisten og komponisten Jerry Roll Morton var en af de første, der slog sit navn fast i den livlige by i nord, og da den unge Louis Armstrong i 1922 sluttede sig til sin lærermester King Oliver, kan man med rette sige, at jazzens centrum endelig blev forlagt til den store industriby ved Michigansøen. Men det var nu først og fremmest de hvide bands, Original Dixieland Jazz Band og New Orleans Rhythm Kings, der gav inspiration til de unge hvide Chicago-folk, der kom til at danne grundstammen i den nye Chicago Jazz.
We didn't, pay attention to music. We liked it. We used to listen every afternoon after school, Austin High. A bunch of us, we sort of were friends together. Teschmacher, Frank Teschmacher, Bud Freeman, my cousin Roy Keane, my brother Richard, and he eventually became my brother-in-law, Jim Lanigan. And that was the nucleus. We'd go into a place where we'd go to have our malted milk or milkshake and a sandwich after school. It was called a Spoon and Straw. And on the tables, they would have records around, just laying out there. It was like the forerunner of the jukebox today, And then they had a Victrola, a record machine. It was 78s. This is about 1923. And we used to listen to these records and have our malted milks and sandwiches, And the records were fine. They were nice. We enjoyed them. Different bands, Paul Whiteman and, I don't know, Paul Beasy and something like that. I don't know. But they were all right. Nothing exciting. Until one day there were some new records in there on the Jeanette. We said, let's listen to the records. Put it on the machine, and it was the New Orleans Rhythm Kings. With Paul Mayer's Rapolo and so forth. And boy, I'm telling you, it started to swing. I mean, it was jazz. This is jazz. And boys, we all got so excited, we flipped. Really excited and enthused. And, boy, that's it. Let's get a band together. We want to play like this, We got the band together, took some lessons from my father, and after a couple of weeks or so, we were all, naturally, we had the compulsion that we wanted to play that jazz. It was so exciting, and never heard anything like that. That we, in a couple of weeks, that we get together with a Victrola, my brother with his banjo, and Jim Lanigan with the bass violin. And Jim Lanigan played piano, too. He was pretty good. And so we would copy. We'd take 2 bars, or maybe 4 bars, and we'd each listen to our part off the records, Teschmacher on the clarinet. We had Bud Freeman get a saxophone. He got a saxophone, Teschmacher clarinet, my brother banjo, Jim Lanigan bass, and me the cornet. All right. And we got a guy by the name of Dave North on piano. He was pretty good. He joined us after a couple of weeks, and we just kept getting the number off the record. It took us maybe a week to get one number, you know, but eventually we just kept going. And every day after school we rehearse, get with the Victrola, go home and eat, come back again and rehearse some more. Every day. Didn't miss a day, you know. So we did that until we finally got a repertoire of 4, 5, 6 numbers. Everything that they had recorded, the New Orleans Rhythm Kings. And it was fine. So we got playing these fraternity meetings, the high school fraternity meetings. Guys would invite us to play. And then some guys would come around at times. This is the reason they called us the Austin High School Gang. Now, my brother and I were pretty good boxers by this time. My father was a pro, and he taught us how to hit, you know. Used to have the gloves and so forth. However, we started playing these things, and some were good, and some we get to some places, and the guys would say, "What are you guys playing? It stinks, you know. You don't like it?" I said, "You don't like it?" And I'd say, "No, it's terrible. That's a horrible sound, you know, terrible." I'd say, "Rich, my brother, he don't like it. Come here." You know, we get him outside. "You don't like it?" "No." Bam. And anybody who didn't like our music was a terrible insult. So after 2 or 3 fights, there weren't much of fights because I could hit hard, even at that age, you know, and anything would go wrong, my brother would come in and he'd sort of mop up. We were cocky, and so that went on until we heard King Oliver and Louis Armstrong records. Boy, that was another one. King Oliver and his Creole jazz band. Man, that was beautiful.
We were very much influenced in those days by King Oliver, you know, the great, practically Louis Armstrong's teacher, although Louis Armstrong was a great artist. He hadn't really developed yet because he was still a young man. And we used to go out, now this is many years ago, we used to go out and hear this wonderful music. It was a new sound to us, the most creative new sound. In fact, no one was hearing this kind of music. We, of our own volition, went out to hear the music. And what you heard in the style of the Austin High Gang, later to be called the so-called Chicago style, was our impression of the then black man's music.
They used to come around about, 2 or 3 o'clock after their clubs would close. They'd come down there and they'd sit around and listen to us play. And we invited them up to come and sit in with us, and those that wanted to play was fine. And so any number of them used to come up there every night.
Among them, Benny Goodman.
Goodman, the Dorsey brothers.
I played with many color orchestras. I sat in Chicago. There was a great kind of ambiance between all these people. Seemed to me, at least, you know. And there was a desire and a real feeling for this.
Benny Goodman was coming up at the time when I was in Chicago. He used to come around, and later on, I met Benny when Jimmy Noon was playing at at one of these after-hour joints. Jimmy Noon was very popular at that time. He was one of the best. And Benny used to come around and listen to Jimmy and all these young white musicians.
Oh, yes, I listened to all kinds of bands. White bands, Negro, anybody who was touching as far as I was concerned.
Who was
Louis Armstrong, Bix Beiderbecke, Frankie Trombar, Isham Jones, my memory's kind of not very good, but quite a few people.
Here they were, the black people, allowed none of the privileges we had, and yet we were allowed to go in, and they seemed to welcome us. They knew we were there for the music. And I remember the big fat doorman who weighed about 350 pounds. He said, I see you're all out here to get your music lessons tonight. Because they knew, you see, that we were there to get the music. And I remember many years later when I did a television show with Lil Armstrong, a show called Chicago and All That Jazz. I asked her about that. She said, you know, we used to look out at you all, and we used to wonder, what are they staring at? What are they doing here? You know, they didn't know, you see, these people didn't know that they were actually laying down a whole new development of music, a whole new creative form of, incidentally, American music, which was later to become jazz.
Every good musician in the whole world seemed to be in Chicago. There was probably 1,000 jazz bands working. You go in a little joint like this room, and there'd be 3 guys playing in the corner, a piano, a bass, and a cornet or something, you know. And it was just thousands of jobs.
Davy Tough, Gene Krupa is the drummers. Even then come George Wetling a little later. Muggsy, Spaniard. Jimmy McPartland was then. There was lesser names in the trumpet field, and William Minogue. Bud Freeman was around Chicago then. Eddie Conlon was around Chicago. Red McKenzie. Now, Red McKenzie came along into Chicago, and he started something going, just like Wingy.
Slow that trombone, boy. Yes, yes. Just like the Gold Parade comes down Rampart Street. Oh!
Guys like that, you know, Eddie Conlon and Bud Freeman, Teschmacher, Gene Krupa, sometime Mesro, but we never liked Mesro. He was too smart, you know, too smart. He tried to break everything up all the time. So when he come knock on the door, Mesro, goodbye. And all the holders, you know, we stayed together too. They like that food. I used to cook, I gotta eat. So instead of cooking a little bit, I cook a big pot. It was cheap. Food was cheap. You get a big pile of red beans for a nickel. Rice a nickel.
During Prohibition, I was working with Jimmy Nunes, making $25 a week. was married and buying an old used car, $25 a week. But everybody had a good time. But it was, the Depression was on in America in those days. Of course, sometimes in those clubs, some of the outlaw fellows, they might come in and give you one night, give you a whole week's salary just to play a few songs for them. Some of the racket element there. They were very generous with musicians. The outlaws, they'd like to show people and musicians, and gave us a great amount of money.
Spiritusforbuddet i USA var blevet indført i 1919, men det fik alt andet end den tilsigtede virkning. Forlystelseslivet blussede gevaldigt op, og Chicago blev lidt toppling town. Der var musik og dans overalt, og Chicago blev byen, der blev synonym med organiseret kriminalitet. Et oplagt investeringsmål for gangsterbanderne var restauranter, natklubber og værtshuse, hvor den forbudte whisky flød, og dollarne sad løst.
Some of them actually owned places that the jazz people played out on the south side too. And the first man I worked for, after I'd played my Italian weddings and my dances and diamond dances, first nightclub was owned by a gangster. His name was Mangano, Lawrence Mangano. The Dago, they call him, Dago Lawrence. Now, he never wanted to be king, but he was the operator in that district. Meanwhile, Al Capone had moved in, and he was organizing. Now there were gang wars going on.
One night we were playing, and at exactly 12 o'clock, it was a time bomb. And just as we hit the introduction for the review to go on, this bomb went off. And in the roof. And the drapers were coming down, you know, and the people was shocked, you know what I mean? And the band, and Joe said, come on, let's play some music, keep the people. And I left the bandstand, several of us, you know, and we were trying to keep, and the people didn't stir, they just looked up like, and they started dancing. And so the police came and they told us to get off the stand and everybody to clear out because there might be another one planted in the bandstand in case if the one in the roof didn't go off. And we got out. And the next night the place was packed. Everybody came to see where the bomb, you know, the hole in the roof.
But it was very common with those things.
Oh, it was a common thing. Every week you had a gang war in the toilet or something, some shooting or something like that, and we'd play. We didn't pay nobody.
They loved us. They used to give us money to play. They fight among themselves, but not in the restaurants, out in the street. See? Oh, they never bothered us. They give us money, shirts, clothes, hats, shoes. They give everybody money. It was good when the gangsters was in. And when those white-collar guys from Washington got in, they killed everything. They stink. You go to Capone, you get a cup of coffee, he give you a whole meal. You go now to the United States Salvation Army, they give you bad coffee, no meal.
Those guys, they're big guys, see. I used to have a lot of fun with, I knew Mimi Capone. I knew the two Capone brothers. Ralph Capone was at that time in the penitentiary when we were in the Grand Terrace. But these guys were great. We used to hang out, drink whiskey with them and everything. But they simply are not, you know, they say, you run this thing. So the guy was running it, Ed Fox was running the farm, he was paying us a certain amount of money. The guy might say, that guy don't know what he's worth, he could get so-and-so. But they're not gonna give it to you. You know what I mean? But I can say the big boys like that, they're all right. They used to tell us, to say, you're all right with us. You don't see nothing, you don't hear nothing, you don't know nothing, you know. So like sometimes if they would start talking, I'd walk away because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be a witness. You know what I mean? It was dangerous.
There was one rule that if you were smart, you didn't see anything. And you certainly didn't look at their women. That was the first thing. Don't, even if the women looked at you, don't look back, you know.
And never open your mouth of what you saw, because there was lots of bad things that you saw in those days. The rival gangsters, stabbing, killing, and all that. I never, you just don't do that. And if you did, of course, you'd be in trouble, you know.
First time, if I may, first time I ever got drunk, I didn't want to. But I was playing the piano, and the whole 18 of these people came up. They call them the Jenner Brothers. And they owned that, they were power there. And one of these fellas was from the neighborhood, and he was a young fella, and we'd played around together. And he thought it would be funny if they all put a drink on the piano and I would have to drink it, see? And it was their rot good booze, and I had to drink it. I mean, either that or commit suicide. I mean, these guys with guns and the power, you know, they exuded. So one drink at a time, when I got through, I was sick. I had enough of that nonsense. I worked for Colosimos, and Colosimo was the man that was reputedly boss that Capone or some of his people killed. I worked there. And I worked throughout the, well, you had to. If you worked for these people. And salary wasn't great, but there was, money was free, tips were free. It wasn't unusual for me to make $10, $20 for playing one number. And I was able to play for girl singers. And they go out on the floor and they sing, you know, I wonder what became of Sally, and they carry a handkerchief, and everybody was in tears. It was a very sad age, you know. There was so much to cry about. And the girls would come back with money. And you get half of it, supposedly. Sometimes they go out and they make a $10 bill. When it hits the handkerchief, it comes out a $1 bill. You wonder where it went.
You see, we used to have to put tips in the money box. And we didn't know, well, no. Anyhow, this money box was on the piano. And I went to, the lights went out, and I didn't know why they went out, but I kind of stuck my hand in the box to get me a little of the tips, you know, for myself. To take some of the tips. And we found out why the lights went out. There was some gangsters in the place, and that's when they killed these two gangsters. Oh, I don't know their names, but anyhow, they were killed right there in the club. That's why the lights went out. Anyhow, I got a little of the change, and the two fellas got killed. But they put the lights out, not me. Oh, boy, but I had a handful of dollars. Lights came on, the musicians caught me with my hand. Oh, sure.
Gee, but it's hard. Love someone when that someone don't love you. I submit. I'm so disgusted, heartbroken too. I've got the downhearted blues. Once I was crazy about a man. He mistreated me all the time. Now the next man I get, he's got to promise to be mine, all mine. Lord, he mistreated me, and he drove me from his door. I said it, dog. Yes, he mistreated me. Oh, he drove me from his door. Ah, the good book says you've got to read just what you sow.
A place called the Friar's Inn there, and this Mike Fritzl owned the place. And it was a sort of no man's land for the gangs, the South Side gang, the Capone gang from the West Side, and Frankie Lane and Drury on the north side, they'd all come in, but they were not supposed to bring guns, or they'd check their guns, just like the old West. They had to check their guns with Mike Fritzl. But one night, and they'd come in there, you know, joining, very big tippers, and so forth. It's gangsters. So one night, one guy in the North Side gang there, and Mike Fritzl, they obeyed him, you know, otherwise he wouldn't let him in, period, if he got out of line. But one night, one of the guys, we just got off the bandstand, one of the guys got out his pistol and bam, bam, he shot up the bass violin. You know, going every which way, terrible. So Mike Fritzl went over there, and man, he was mad. And Jim Radigan, my brother-in-law, was scared. Well, I was a little scared too, but I told him, I said, Mike, look at him, ruined his $850 bass violin. It cost $850. Who's going to pay for that? You know. So the leader of the gang, Frankie Lake, I was standing right there with Mike Fritzl. He just went in his pocket, peeled off $850 and gave it to Mike Fritzl. Mike Fritzl gave it to Jim. He gave it to me, because Jim Radigan was in the back, my brother. He gave me the money, and I went back with Jim. And the bass violin only cost $250. So actually, I kept $350 and gave Jim Radigan $500. You know, so that's the way it was in those days.
Den hektiske tid krævede også sine ofre. En af dem, måske den største inspirator for stort set alle jazzmusikere på den tid, var den hvide kornetist Bix Beiderbecke, der også spillede med Paul Whitemans og Gene Goldkets orkestre.
The last of April of 1926, Jimmy Dorsey left, and then came Trombar with his C melody sax and Bix Beiderbecke. And immediately we had a cornet player with 2 trumpets, and with Bill Rank and myself. So, and then of course with Bix's tremendous improvisation, you know.
Yes, he was one of the first to improvise, really.
Oh, I guess he was. Oh. And you know, so many times people say, was he really as good as they say? And I said, you bet your life he was. Oh, he's just fantastic. And yeah, I just think he would be the most surprised guy in the world. I mean, to know how this recognition and how he just idolized, you know.
He was a great inspiration to all of us. A very deep man. I think if Beiderbecke Bix had not been a musician, he would have been something great. He was a great artist. Beiderbecke was a wonderful man. He was, as I say, a very deep man. He had many interests, you know, that had nothing to do with music. Very much interested in the aesthetic life. Loved the theater. There's a very interesting incident. I was playing with Ben Pollock in New York, and Bix and I had been friends for a few years. And John Barrymore had just come back from London with his Shakespearean company, and John Barrymore was considered then by all London critics to be the greatest of all Hamlets. So he came back, and they were doing a part of the of Hamlet on radio. And Bix came running down the stairs of the little club where I was playing with Ben Pollock, and we were about to have our intermission. He said, "Come on, Bud." He said, "John Barrymore is going to be on radio with the Shakespearean company. They're going to do a part of Hamlet." So he knew I loved the theater, which I do. So he whisked me off. We went and heard this, and I was an hour and a half late getting back to bed and almost got fired that night. He was a sort of a loner, you know. I mean, he was a deep man, and I think he knew it, or maybe he never gave it a thought. But many times, people would find him sitting down in the cellar somewhere with a cap on and a glass of gin, 3 or 4 in the morning, playing beautiful piano just for himself. He was a fine pianist, you know, and a wonderful musician. I think we tend perhaps to exaggerate when we use the word genius. But I think if anyone was a genius, it was Bix, which is in itself a redundant thing to say. But we were all very much influenced by him, and so was Louis Armstrong, by the way. Because if Louis were here to tell you, if he were alive, he would tell you that he really admired Bix.
He grabbed the trumpet, the cornet. We played piano first. Played good piano. And drink.
He drank quite a bit, really. And I was, we were rooming together. We were staying together. I came in New York with Ben Pollock, and we roomed together at the 44th Street Hotel there for a couple of weeks until he went out of town. And we had double beds, and it's probably not nice to say, but it's true. But in the morning when the phone would ring, in between our beds there was a table there and a lamp and a phone and a bottle of gin and a glass. When that phone would ring, Bix would pour the glass gin first, and then, wow. And I used to go, wow, how can he stand it? I was about 20 years old then, I guess, 21 with Ben Pollock and Glenn Miller and Benny. And I didn't see how he could do that. I found out later on how he could do it, though. But as a person, he was very nice. He wasn't very, he didn't talk too much. Because his interest, he just wasn't interested in anything else but music. You know. Things were all right, but, and nice, he always treated me like I was his younger brother. He just always called me kid. I remember him coming to Chicago when he was with Paul Whiteman's band, Jimmy Dorsey, Tommy Dorsey, and the Rhythm Boys, Joe Venuti, the Rhythm Boys with Bing Crosby, so forth. And he got to Chicago, and we used to have jam sessions down at a place called the Three Deuces, right across the street from the Chicago Theater. And all the musicians in Chicago, the jazz men, you know, used to come down every afternoon when the band was playing at the Chicago Theater, Bix. And they'd have jam sessions, drink, you know, and Bix would play and all the guys would play, everybody would play. So Bix, I came down every day. Bix one day says to me, he says, kid, he says, come here, he says, try this. I want you to play this cornet. It's a beautiful cornet. He says, I want to play piano anyway. So he says, see how you like it. It's a beautiful horn. So good. So he played the piano, and I played his cornet. He says, it's a Bach cornet. So I played it, good. Oh, it was beautiful horn, beautiful. So he asked me, he said, how do you like it? I said, wonderful. He says, well, get one, buy one. I said, I haven't got any money. I wasn't working. He said, meet me after the next show. We'll go over to the Dixie Music House and get one. So, went over to the Dixie, after the next show I was there, went over to the Dixie Music House, and he picked up some of the horns, Bach horns, and he picked, this is the horn he picked out. I didn't have any money. I think the horn in those days was $150, $175, and he only had about $125 in his pocket. He just pulled out the money, he says, here. And he asked the guy, he says, you signed for it, Jim. So he said, the kid, we pay the rest of it, $5 a week, $5 a month. I said, okay, good. So he took this horn, this is the horn.
Another great thrilling part of my life to go to the first time I was in a big city. I came from a little place, and to go to this big city and meeting Bix Beiderbecke, who I'd heard about. Everybody heard about him. But to actually see him and hear he was something else, you know. And it happened that the band that I joined had a banjo player that was a great friend of Bix's. And he introduced me to Bix, and I think the first time I shook his hand, I almost fainted. You know, because he was a big name, you know. And I never heard anybody play open until I heard Bix. And in Chicago, you say I'm influenced by Louis. That's the one thing that just floored me when I heard Louis. You know, to be swinging like he was and playing like he was. And I told you when I heard Bix with the open horn, I never used a mute again. And I lost some jobs for that reason. I would not put a mute in my horn again.
Capone var den store mand i Chicago, og hans stolthed, den flotte restaurant Grand Terrace, fik lov til at fortsætte uantastet, trods myndighedernes forsøg på at stoppe gangsteruvæsenet. I december 1928 tiltrådte den da 23-årige pianist Earl Hines det, der skulle blive jazzhistoriens længste engagement på Al Capones højborg.
They had a big show. They had a show of, we had 35 people in the show. 16 chorus girls, 8 parade girls, 17 men in the band, 4 floormen, 12 waiters, 6 waitresses. So it was a big show, and it was a big club, and dancing. And it used to run 4 to 5 hours a night, 9:30 until about 3 in the morning, and Saturday night till 5 o'clock. 7 nights a week then, because we had no musicians union to tell us different. So it was, then we did broadcasting from there. We broadcast every night for 1 hour on 2 different, what they call networks. That was the history of the Grand Terrace, and we had what we call the star night would be Sunday night. And every star that was ever in our jurisdiction in Chicago, we'd have them there at the Grand Terrace as our guests. So that's about all I can tell you about the Grand Terrace, unless you were there, you know what I mean? Of course, lots of fun. It was all, I can tell you that later on in years, Al Capone came in and took 25%, and so we didn't have any trouble. It was a happy-go-lucky organization.
All of these places are front. I mean, it meant that as long as these guys had these fronts, there was work for musicians. I mean, whether they really give a damn whether the musicians survived or not, it was something else. I mean, you know, bam, they got the place, so you work. You know what I mean? And when the political situation would come along, where they had to close these places and to try to prove a point like that, then they put a lot of people out of work. You know. So it was just a matter of work. I mean, you know, they had these places, they don't care. They like the musicians, they like the chorus girls, they like everything, because they like that life, you know, that wild, sparkling life that the theatrical people could give them, and the entertainment they could give them. But, I mean, it was a matter of business. I mean, the place was a front, you know. It still is.
De voldsomme begivenheder i Chicago, forbundsmyndighedernes gennemtrumfen af forbuddet trods en korrupt borgmester, Capones midlertidige pacificering og den nationale katastrofe, krakket i Wall Street i oktober 1929, fik afgørende betydning for den såkaldte Chicago-epokes endelig.
But little by little, Chicago became a ghost city. Jazz went to New York. Everybody. After the 29 crash in 30s, and things got so slow there. There was no work. Musicians started going to New York. And suddenly all jazz has moved to New York.
Man kan sige, at musikken og musikerne endnu en gang var fulgt i Armstrongs fodspor. Det skete første gang, da han forlod sin fødeby for at slutte sig til King Oliver i Chicago, og det skete nu igen, hvor han var rejst til New York for at fejre triumfer som jazzens første store solist. Man var på vej mod en ny stor epoke i jazzmusikkens historie, svingtiden.